For years, Stargate fans held their breath. Amazon's purchase of MGM for $8.45 billion promised a grand revival, and Daniel Jackson himself is now teasing massive changes. But what actually happened after early excitement, secret cast talks, and reports of a reboot? The truth behind Amazon's shocking studio politics and Daniel's cryptic hints shattered everything we thought we knew. So what is unfolding behind those still closed gates, and what is Michael Shanks really keeping from us? Brad Wright spent years quietly assembling what fans had always hoped for, a true Stargate continuation, not a reboot or a side story, but a return to the universe where it left off. By 2018, he was deep into development, working on scripts that would finally bring Daniel Jackson, Samantha Carter, Jack O'Neill, and Cameron Mitchell back together. The plan was not just a cameo reunion. Negotiations were active with Michael Shanks, Amanda Tapping, and Ben Browder, with each in talks to reprise their roles. Early drafts sketched out a story that would pick up the threads left hanging since 2011, aiming to resolve the Stargate universe cliffhanger and bridge the years-long gap. For the first time since the franchise went silent, the original cast and creator were all circling the same table, sharing ideas about where these characters had been and where they could go next. Michael Shanks, always candid about his past departures and returns, spoke openly about the renewed energy in the room. He described how after years of uncertainty, the creative team had found common ground, echoing his past experience returning to SG, one after his own exit. Amanda Tapping and Ben Browder expressed excitement about revisiting their characters with the benefit of time and new perspective. Wright's vision was clear: honor the legacy, respect the fans, and let the original team finish what they started. For fans, it felt like the impossible was finally within reach. The creative stars were aligning, and the gate was about to open once more. The collapse of Brad Wright's revival wasn't just a creative setback. It sent shockwaves through the entire Stargate family. Christopher Judge, who brought Teal'c to life for over a decade, had been developing his own vision called Free Jaffa Nation. Judge imagined a story where the Jaffa, newly freed from Goa'uld rule, built a thriving civilization, something like Wakanda in science fiction. That idea never made it past the pitch meeting. Once Amazon took control, the project disappeared without a trace. Joseph Malazzi, a key writer and producer from SG-1 and Atlantis, watched as the doors closed on every familiar name. He described the new regime's approach bluntly, saying the original creative team were the wrong people to ask. Years of experience and decades of world building were suddenly irrelevant. Amazon's leadership wanted a clean slate, and anyone tied to the old guard was left out in the cold. For the cast and crew who had kept Stargate alive through cancellations, reboots, and network switches, the message was clear. The people who understood the franchise best were no longer welcome at the table. Frustration simmered beneath the surface, not just because beloved projects were shelved, but because the sense of shared ownership had been replaced by corporate silence. The creative freeze-out wasn't just about lost opportunities. It was a warning that the future of Stargate would be decided far from the writer's room and far from the voices that made it matter. Inside Amazon's Hollywood headquarters, the fate of Stargate became a corporate chess match. Jennifer Salke, head of Amazon MGM Studios, held the keys to the franchise's future. Insiders described her as cautious, wary of big gambles on legacy science fiction. While fans waited for any sign of movement, projects like Rings of Power and The Boys sailed through development, soaking up attention and resources. Stargate, by contrast, remained stuck in the pipeline, quietly deprioritized year after year. Reports surfaced from industry sources. Salke's priorities leaned toward fresh, prestige projects and high-profile literary adaptations, not sprawling, interconnected universes like Stargate. But not everyone in Amazon's leadership agreed with this approach. Mark Fergus, co-creator of The Expanse and a lifelong Stargate fan, pushed from the inside for a new series. He argued that Stargate's built-in fan base and deep mythology could anchor a streaming juggernaut if handled with care. Fergus lobbied for a vision that respected both the past and the possibilities of the future, but his proposals often stalled before reaching the green light stage. Meanwhile, Jeff Bezos' direct involvement in Amazon's entertainment division changed the calculus for every major intellectual property. When the James Bond franchise came under Amazon's control, Bezos famously insisted that Bond remain British and male, overruling creative proposals and shaking up the studio's chain of command. The ripple effects were felt across every legacy property. Stargate's fate was no longer just a question of creative ambition. It was now entangled in the priorities, egos, and risk calculations of some of the most powerful executives in Hollywood. The result was years of creative paralysis, with the franchise locked in a holding pattern while internal champions and skeptics jockeyed for control. While creative teams and longtime cast members found themselves sidelined, the real bottleneck sat at the intersection of contracts and corporate leadership. For years, any new Stargate project faced a legal maze because of the original 1994 film's director, Roland Emmerich. His contract, signed decades earlier with MGM, reserved him a powerful say in the fate of the franchise. No major Stargate series or reboot could move forward without Emmerich's involvement or explicit approval. This clause loomed over every proposal, from Brad Wright's continuation scripts to Christopher Judge's spin-off pitch, forcing Amazon to tread carefully. Even with a massive studio behind it, Stargate was locked in place by paperwork and old Hollywood deals. Corporate leadership added another layer of gridlock. Jennifer Salk, as head of Amazon MGM Studios, steered the company's priorities away from legacy science fiction. Greenlights went to high-profile projects, while Stargate collected dust on the shelf. The franchise's creative freeze wasn't just about taste, it was about who held the keys and what they were willing to unlock. But in early 2025, the equation changed. Salke's departure from Amazon MGM Studios was confirmed, removing one of the last major obstacles in the path. With her exit, insiders described a sudden sense of possibility. For the first time since the MGM acquisition, legal and executive barriers began to fall away. The question shifted from if Stargate could return to how and who would have the power to shape its next era. The ground was finally clearing for new debates, new risks, and the next fight over what Stargate should become. Amazon's hesitation comes down to numbers and risk. Stargate SG-1, at its peak, cost around $3 million per episode, a figure that once felt steep for cable science fiction. But in today's streaming era, prestige projects like The Rings of Power are reported to cost up to $60 million per episode. That is a 20-fold jump. For a studio, greenlighting a new Stargate series means betting blockbuster money on a franchise with a devoted but comparatively small audience. Then there is the continuity challenge. 17 seasons, 2 main spin-offs, movies, and web series create a mountain of backstory. New viewers face a homework assignment just to catch up, and every dollar spent has to justify itself against that legacy. For Amazon, the question is not just whether Stargate is beloved, it is whether it can ever be big enough to balance those costs. Every Stargate discussion now turns into a battleground. On one side, longtime fans demand closure, a real ending for the crew stranded on Destiny, a return of Jack, Sam, Daniel, and Teal'c, the family they grew up with. For them, a reboot feels like erasing history. But the other camp sees a fresh start as the only way forward, arguing that the old continuity has boxed the story in. They pitch wild ideas, a series set among the ancients, a Stargate revealed to the public, even a version that ditches the military entirely. Both sides fear the same thing, losing what made Stargate special. Forums fill with anxious posts. Will Amazon flatten the humor? Will the show become just another dark prestige drama? With every rumor, the anxiety grows. The only certainty is that no decision will make everyone happy. The future of Stargate now hinges on a single question. Will Amazon treat its legacy as sacred or as just another asset? With billions invested and millions waiting, the choice will echo far beyond fandom. What matters now is whether they're listening. Drop your hopes below.